I think with 50 students here, as I can see, we should start. Uh, the rest of the 33 or more students will keep coming. I will admit them, but I think I should start. Okay, so because we're asked to do a thesis writing workshop kind of a class with you, Dr. James and we have thought we will do something. I think I have gone through what Sir James have explained and also have given you an handout. I think it covers basically everything. So I hope you read them through. And this handout or the lecture that we both give is not just for the thesis writers, but this is absolutely for everyone who is in the field of academia. So I think that should be able to help each one of you, whether you're writing thesis or not writing thesis. So I appreciate what he's done. The handout he gave you is all perfect. I mean, superb. I liked it. I've seen it. But in my own perspective, I want to share some thought about how research should be going about and how important it is to have a technically right research writing in your career. After I finish the talk, I will give you a few minutes to ask questions and clarifications if you have. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, thesis writing is, first of all, not a report writing. Thesis writing is not a reporting speech. That someone have done this, so you are actually trying to do relevant stuff and you are just copying them and writing and submitting it. That's not thesis. Because thesis writing is not a reporting speech of the old stuff, thesis writing necessitates coming up with certain novelty. Novelty, when I say, it means the newness. Your thesis should bring about some kind of newness in your research. As you write your thesis and submit to the department concerned, your thesis should contribute to the learning fraternity of that particular department. So it is very important to come up with something new after you do your 10,000 words research or 15,000 words research. Is that clear with you?
Yes, sir.
And a key term I use is novelty. Novelty, the newness in your research. Secondly, as it has been dealt by Sir James as well, hypothesis. Whichever topic you come with, you need to have hypothesis. Hypothesis means the assumed result after you do your research. You assume that towards the end of your thesis, you can bring out this point, this point, this point, this point. That's hypothesis. Hypothesis is an assumption, a very legitimate assumption, initially with less evidence and facts. But having posed hypothesis early on, in your thesis writing, you should be able to prove through your findings that the hypothesis that you have laid early on by your findings, you should prove it. That's hypothesis. And based on the hypothesis that you have frameworked early on, you should take your investigation based on the assumption, a legitimate assumption. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thirdly, when you are about to do any thesis in the discipline of any department. Make sure that whether it is your BD thesis or master's thesis, that's not the end of the world. Whichever thesis proposal you're trying to do, don't think that you're going to influence the whole world with that 10,000 words thesis. You have to be very specific. You have to be very systematic. Don't ever think that your PD thesis or MTH thesis or your doctoral thesis is the remedy to the broken world. It's just an inch, an iota of contribution that you can give to the world, but not the 100% remedy to the whole world situation. So if you're talking about alcoholism in family, be very specific. Which family, where, which period. If you're talking about biblical studies, you have to find out specific biblical problem so that that problem, you think that you can give certain solution, you post hypothesis over there, and based on the hypothesis, you have to start exegeting and investigating as to how you can give a remedy to certain issue. Whichever thesis it is, that is not the end of the world. You have to be very specific and you have to come out with a specific remedial measures. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Fourthly, some of the means and ways, the pathways by which you can do thesis are, as Sir James have also mentioned, number one, I'm just suggesting four. Number one, qualitative. Number two, quantitative. Number three, verbatim. Number four, questionnaire.
Yes, sir.
And so, in a qualitative research, what you do is, for example, you are doing a research on female, on ladies in a particular area, ladies in Chaluki town, for example, or ladies in Chumukitima town. Okay, in a qualitative research, what you do is the topic of the thesis could be the issue of long hair and short hair women possess. If that's the topic, and you are specifying in Chumukitima society, then what you have to do, if you are looking at qualitative, you will have to investigate on what if a girl have long hair and what is the quality of that hair. Is that hair having a lot of dandruff? Or what sort of shampoo is necessary for that sort of hair? How silky is the hair if it is too long? Or how often do you wash? If you wash one time in a week, what effect, what consequences you see on the end of the first week? You know, that sort of qualitative quality that you try to investigate. But when it comes to quantitative, you're trying to look at quantity. How many people keeps long hair? How many people keeps short hair? How many times long hair women wash their hair in a week? How many times short hair girls wash their hair in a week? How many shampoo short people use in a month? Which ml? 100 ml, 200 ml, 500 ml? How many ml shampoo women with long hair apply in a week? You know, quantitative, it's that sort of thing. How many women out of 1,000 women have long hair, have short hair? What is the personality of a woman that have short hair and long hair? You know, there is a difference between qualitative research and quantitative research. As a PD researcher that is limited to 10,000 to 15,000 words, I think the pathway, the means by which you do your qualitative and quantitative research is, you cannot follow both ways, I think. I think personally, because it will fetch up all your words in 10,000 to 15,000. So I would suggest doing qualitative research on widows struggling with monetary issue at home, or widows who lost his husband, her husband, so she has to struggle with joblessness. That sort of either it should be qualitative or quantitative. Verbatim is a pathway by which you do research asking verbal question. You go to hospitals and look for leprosy patient, and you actually ask a question and you note it down. And you have legitimate technicalities involved in verbatim. Counseling department can really help you in that. So how to be confidential in doing such an interview verbatim, how not to disclose the name, how if you want to disclose the name, taking the permission of the client and all that stuff. Verbatim pathway is a pathway by which you do investigation through verbal talk. The next is questionnaire. Questionnaire can be, you can be in a residential place, but you send off your question all around, whoever you think can respond to your question. In cultural studies, in social issue studies, if you're writing on that, you can frame a question. You have to work with your supervisor, with your guide. Your guide has to approve your questionnaires. Your guide can delete some of the questions. You need approval, because some students, when they prepare question, they think that they can solve the whole world issue, so they put up 101 different questions when their thesis is just confined to small little thing which is expected from PD student. But you think that's, you're doing a massive job, so you tend to write 101 different questions. Your guide will have to monitor that. You can send it off, and there also requires some technicalities and professionalism in questionnaire, how you should address to the respondent of your question, how you should acknowledge them, how confidential and not confidential it can go. So that sort of thing is the pathway by which you do your research. Is that clear and fine?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Nature of the thesis. Number 5. Nature of the thesis. Your thesis can be of various types. One could be a critique to certain theories. So in pastoral care and counseling, there are some theories. In biblical studies, there are some theories. In Christian missions and theologies, Christian history, you have certain theories, certain things that are laid as a norm. You know, you can actually critique that sort of theories, and you can actually propose some kind of remedial theories understandable to the different contexts of the time. Next is appraisal for change. The nature of the thesis could be your thesis emphasizes more of social change. You want social change to be implemented out of your thesis writing. So prior to doing that, you have to find specific problem. The problem is, why is there no change? What is the problem that people don't change? That is the problem. And you have to find out measures as to how you can bring about change. That nature of the thesis is called appraisal for change. It could be social change, political change, ecological change, historical change, personality change. The next is historiographical evaluation. People from the history and missions department, whoever wants to do in that department, you are doing on women's society in WSBAK, or you are doing some historical account of E.W. Clark visit to Malong Kimong village. You are trying to do some historical writing, historical rendition. You know what? There's this sensitivity. You can't always keep reporting how E.W. Clark came to Nagaland. You can't always keep reporting what happened in WSBK between 1970 to 1980. Thesis writing is not a report writing. You can't always keep reporting it. You have to find, okay, in the historical rendition of 1970 to 1980 Women Department WSBK, what has been missed? What is missing? What is the historiography? Where did it go wrong? Where is that thing? You have to find that issue first. and you have to bring about remedy. Historiography means putting up history, writing up history, accounting the history, okay, cataloging the history. So you have to actually, many people have done on women department, mission department in that church, children's department in that church and organization and association. Well, you can do that, you can account for that, but I think you have to find out what's the novelty in there, what is the newness you do in there. If you are doing that, some sort of change in the historiography over what people have done, you should actually have your own newness as well, not just what people have already done. Please see that you come out with certain newness in the historiography, which means how can you do that? You have to find out what people have missed early on in their historiography and accounts. The next is ideological and dichotomized readings. So especially such as this comes with the biblical studies and theology and religion as well, where you want to actually look and attack ideological rendition of biblical narrative. The partiality in the biblical narrative that has come all the way. Maybe you can choose two verses. Maybe you can choose a pericope, a paragraph, or a narrative in itself. And you can actually critique the ideological stance that you see in the text, the wrong kind of interpretation that has come all the way. So you can actually critique that. Dichotomized means that the difference in the scaling. So some have been given some have been overrated, some underrated in the interpretation, in theologizing. So you can actually look at that small area where you can find. And you can bring about remedial measures and remedial interpretation. See, thesis writing, finding a thesis topic is not a cup of tea. Finding the thesis problem is not happening overnight. It's not just easy curry. It should be thought over and over and over again. Thesis title is the product of overthinking. So you have to keep that in mind. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I will send you I have put a few handwriting note in my diary. If you want it, I can send you whatever I've written here after I lecture. There are ways like this, methods like historical critical method in biblical studies, text narrative error as a problem, and you research for remedial interpretation, literary criticisms, survey of social political evil causes, consequences, and measures that you can pick up, liberation reading like feminism. You can follow certain feminists like Fiorenza, tribal reading if you wanted to. You know, methodology again is you are trying to do the investigation, bring about remedial measures, not on your own understanding. You are going to follow certain models. You are going to follow certain strongholds in the department. If you want to walk a pothole road, if you want to travel in the jungle, because you are born and brought up in the city, you can't walk in the forest like some of us can do. So what you need is a stick, a staff to walk, to comfort you, to make your footpath easy, to take your footstep ease. So you need a stick. That stick, that staff that leads your way is the methodology in academia. So you need to have certain methodology. It could be feminist reading. If you want to do feminist reading in Sumi Naka culture, okay, whatever, Sanctum Naka culture, what you can do is you need to follow certain models. You need to follow certain stars, you know, to find the ending. So methodology such as this. Tribal study, you can follow KP Nirmal, KP Elias, Tanzawa, Zodi Angami, Yankaho Vashum, Wati Longjar. You know, in their argument, in their proposition to study tribal method of reading scripture text, tribal reading of studying the tribal worldview, they have certain methodology. You have to find them and put that as your methodology. And so in your investigation, your nature of the research, your pathway of the research should follow that model, that idea in your research. Eco-justice study, gender justice study, ethics, subjects such as ethics, Christian ethics and Christian theology, they have so many methodology. We call it solidarity methodology. The method that actually identify with the client, the method that relate with the subject people, with the area of clients, area of concern that you are doing your thesis. So this is what it is. Methodology is a stronghold. Methodology is a stick and a staff and a star and a model that you actually follow in order to reach the destination. You can't do your thesis on your own understanding. You have to follow certain method. Okay? Is that fine?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sir.
Yes. So basically, not for you to remember is you must learn how to read. You must learn how to paraphrase what you have read. It is not an easy task, but you have to do. Read a paragraph today. And after you read one paragraph written by Wati Longjar, for example, written by Gerhard von Rath in Old Testament, reading by Frank S. Frick in New Testament, written by Keshav Chandra Sen in Theology Department, written by Fiorenza in Women's Studies, whichever department book you read one paragraph, you don't understand anything. That's 100% fine. I experienced the same. But whatever you have read this afternoon, while you sleep tonight, think about it. It will all come back. When it comes back, whatever thought and input and insight that you get out of your brain, put that into writing, and that becomes a paraphrased language. After you paraphrase certain things like that, you must know how to acknowledge people. Whose idea did you borrow? You must know how to put quotation. These are some of the technicalities we don't intend to teach you here. But when you really start writing thesis, we might want to thorough on that. But you must know how to apply these methodologies. You must be an expert in using subject-specific language. We call it SSL, subject-specific language. If you are doing research in pastoral care and counseling, you should be able to pick up pastoral care and counseling language on and off. And you should be able to fluently speak about this subject-specific language. Same is with other department. When you write a thesis, you're going to divide into chapters. Chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So students, what they do, including myself as a researcher for many years, what we experience is we do chapter 1 and we think that chapter 1 is over and chapter 2 starts with completely different aspect. No, chapter 1 and chapter 2 must flow like a river. There has to be coherence and there has to be a flow. Your talk pattern, your thought pattern, your verbal pattern, your language pattern must flow from chapter 1 to chapter 2. Flow and coherence can be the greatest challenge for students like us in research writing. You must take your audience. You must take your reader. For example, you write a thesis. I am reading your thesis. You must take me towards proper stream of water. You must not take me to Northern Sea one time. You must not take me to Doyang another time. You must not take me to Tiku River another time. And you must not take me to Saramati Mountain another time. Every chapter must flow in a particular river, which I mean to say it has to have coherence in your talk. Which is why I say again, the connectivity of languages, flow of thought is very important. Although you might have 10 chapters, 5 chapters, 6 chapters, or 3 chapters, it must have connectivity. You must also remember that thesis writing is not just for marks, but your thesis will be read by somebody certain somewhere else. So you must focus on your audience. Your audience cannot also only be from the theological fraternity. And engineering students might want to read your thesis someday. an ecological student, and a geologist, a zoologist might want to read your thesis someday. So your audience will be interdisciplinary. So you must see that you cover your audience. I mean to say, the use of language, subject specific language, you must let your audience understand it. You must footnote it. If there is a technical jargon languages used, you must always footnote it. What does it mean? Because that's how you take your audience easily. For example, you invite a stranger to come and eat food with yourself, and you put so many terrible, wonderful items on the dining table. When your guest is standing up there, you might want to introduce the dish to your audience first, so that your audience, your guest who has come to eat with you is made easy. Oh, this is an octopus meat. This is a seagull meat. This is a wild fruit meat. You must take your audience right. You must introduce right. Do not indulge in plagiarism. You just cut paste from anywhere you like and you just don't acknowledge, you just don't put quotation. Don't indulge in plagiarism. Go as best possible for the primary and original sources. Do not go for any other, any sort of people writing in Google and Wikipedia. Unless it is so necessary, avoid them. I repeat, if you give proper introduction to your thesis, at the end of the thesis writing, you are going to write a page abstract as well. A page abstract or an introduction to your chapter can be a guidebook to a zoo park. When you go to the zoological park, there is a gatekeeper and a zoo guide who gives you a brochure, a piece of paper, a brochure that describes about the zoo. If you go to the right direction, you find elephant. If you take the left, you find cobra. If you take another road, there is a dangerous monkey in there. So be careful when you go there. When you go there, don't do this, don't do that. Thesis introduction and abstract is like a zoo guide to your reader. So your introduction to every chapter is very important so that your reader or your guide or later on in life when somebody reads your book, your reader understands that, oh, this chapter is going to be this. Okay, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to read. Your introduction must be apt. If you put a proper introduction and a proper conclusion, it will be like you wearing a proper fitting jean where you're too comfortable and you can go anywhere you like. So you need to have a proper conclusion, abstract, and introduction. I think this is all that I have, giving you the gist of how to go about thesis writing. If you now have any question, I give you the time. Anybody here? Are you all clear then? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Are you all clear? Are you sleeping away?
Yes, sir.
About qualitative, quantitative, verbatim, and questionnaire.
What? Repeat.
Can you please tell us more about qualitative, quantitative, verbatim, and questionnaire?
Okay. So verbatim is means and ways and paths by which you do your research. Verbatim research. See, you are doing especially verbatim happens with pastoral care and counseling, Christian ministry department. So you actually have a thesis doing on, and one of the chapters will have a verbatim report. So verbatim report is you prepare your question for yourself. You go to the client. You go to anywhere, truck ethic or broken families or whatever, with professionalism, okay, with upbeat professionalism, with respectful talk and mentality. You will be trained for that by your guide, I believe. And you go and ask question personally with your mouth and you record it. You can record it in your mobile phone with your tape recorder. You can record it with your handwriting also. So this is verbatim, where you go into verbally. Other one is questionnaire. Questionnaire is you prepare a question, you and your guide compromise, you and your not compromise really, you and your guide come to a conclusion that this is going to be the question, and you send off to people who can respond to your question. So you send off you that the questionnaire response come back in a stipulated time, and once it comes back, you actually tabulate it. Yes, no, true, not sure, okay, I am. That sort of response, you actually frame it, compress it into a tabulation. Qualitative research is you are trying to find the quality of certain issue. You are doing, I gave an example of long hair, short hair, where you are questioning people both verbally or in a written format through phone call or anything else. You are trying to find quality response from the people. So you are doing some research on agriculture. You produce a lot of pumpkin, for example, and you want to find about the quality of the pumpkin. And the consumer of the pumpkin are being questioned. In the question of the pumpkin, you actually try to find out how tasty is the pumpkin, how many times it should be cooked when it is broken into two, what vitamin that does it provide, what kind of soil it requires to give good fruit. That sort of quality you try to find it. But in quantitative, you try to find out how many eat pumpkin curry in a day, how many families buy pumpkin curry, and how many do they buy in a week, and how many seed has to be sowed in. If you dig one mud, one seed or two seed has to be sowed. How many there's a pumpkin farm that you also go and visit in the midst of your research, and you go and ask the farmer, how many pumpkins do you pluck in one season. That sort of quantitative research is what you do. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Any other? All right, class, if you don't have any question, I think I want to end up here. But if you have any questions throughout, both in thesis writing, also for people who are not writing, don't worry, this is still part of the learning. So for people who are writing, keep thinking. Thesis proposal is not a cup of tea. It does not happen overnight. It needs a lot of investment to think, to torture yourself, to rephrase and rephrase and rephrase, to edit and edit and edit, to discuss with some of the potential guides and come up with a proposal. So I wish you good luck for all those people who are willing to write. Continue to read, continue to study. For those people who have patiently listened to me, it's still useful for your career. If that's all, I want to end up here. I will send the hand out to the CR.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, I want you to please tell us about the proposal, how to go about with the proposal.
So in SearchM's handout, there is a structure, right? Thesis proposal, statement of the problem, elaboration of the problem, previous research, hypothesis. SearchM structure has it all. Have you not looked at his PDF? So how to go about means you have to find the problem, find a cause to which you want to give remedy, frame the title. The framing of the title won't happen overnight, as I said. It has to be re-edited, rephrased, invest a lot of time and thought. And after you come up with that, you need to statement of the problem can be 1 or 2 pages, precisely what happened, why do you want to do that, the elaboration. That's how you go about. Potokali, is that clear? Okay. I think that's all I can do. If you've learned something, it's all blessing. If you're not clear with something, you're welcome to continue to ask me. I can respond in the convenient time I can. If that's the thing, I want to wind up here. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.